even though I have been in bed for the past week with the flu, I want to share with you why I think illness doesn't actually exist. So I'm not saying this, I want to be really clear from the beginning that I don't believe in bypassing illness, or I don't believe in bypassing our body's responses. That's not where I'm getting at here. I have spent a lot of my life chronically ill. From a young age, I had chronic tonsillitis, and that led to a tonsillectomy. From that tonsillectomy, I actually had a throat hemorrhage and ended up back in hospital. And from that point, I then had about 10 years of chronic fatigue. So this is my little preface to say that I have suffered. I'm not saying this as someone who has not suffered from fairly extreme conditions, fairly extreme situations and experiences. Because no one who's chronically ill is going to like to be told that illness doesn't exist. But bear with me. So from having had that chapter of difficulty and hardship to where I am now, I wanted to kind of share some thoughts about how I got here. Because actually this is the first time that I've been ill like this in over a year and a half, which for me, having grown up being like this maybe 4 or 5 times a year, is revolutionary. And I think one of the main changes that has enabled me to reduce the duration of my symptoms, reduce the intensity of the symptoms, and also prolong the amount of time that I'm displaying symptoms. So in this case, a year and a half. And I think that for me has been my mindset around what illness is and whether I'm actually a victim of fate. So the narrative that I grew up with, that I was told, was that I was just a victim of circumstance, that for some reason my immune system was not withstanding the onslaught of attack. And looking back, it just doesn't make any sense. I was an elite athlete. I was at the peak of my health, right? And so I began to think, there has to be another cause. There has to be another reason why this is happening to me. And it wasn't really until I started practicing yoga in a consistent and committed way that I began to question that former narrative. Because as I was practicing and I could feel my body changing, and the reality that I was experiencing was that my body was this incredible vessel. It was powerful and strong, and it had the capacity to heal and change itself when it was treated with care and respect and dignity. And I began to, that was my experience, and so it was establishing itself in my values and my worldview that my body is a part of nature. And then that made me reflect, okay, so why does nature have these mistakes, these illnesses that just come out of nowhere and knock you flat and can take decades of your life? And it was around this time that I came across the German New Medicine. And now this is a very controversial topic, and I'm not really interested in debating GNM in any way. It has completely revolutionized my life and taken me from someone who was, like I say, chronically ill to rejoicing and being able to experience this week of sickness as a refreshing rest and a beautiful healing process, because I understand why it happened. And the GNM helped me to track this incredible psychological and biological cycle that was occurring, where I was going through very specific conflicts and then as I was resolving these issues, that's when I was having these healing symptoms. And the symptoms in my case, in this example, are healing symptoms. And the GNM says that, if you're chronically ill, you're tracking back. So you're stuck in this loop and not able to fully allow the body to go through its natural healing phase. So if you want to learn more about GNM, I'm not an accredited practitioner, but I have worked very intimately with a wonderful practitioner, and I will put the link to the institute on this description of this video. And please don't try not to research it in other places, because 99% of what is out there about the GNM is not true, unfortunately. So there's a few stages to this process. The first one being awareness. So as I began to work with the practitioner, and I was also working, with my yoga and my meditation to really try to understand my body. I wanted to understand what was happening. I was really listening and being attentive rather than allowing myself just to be buffeted by these quite extreme symptoms and fall into victimhood. So the first layer was awareness. And then the second layer was processing a lot of what I experienced as a child, processing a lot of the stories that I had around illness. So it can be very common for us to create narratives around the sickness, and just know that the narrative keeps us sick. We need to remember that. Like, the narrative of being chronically ill is one that is going to keep you chronically ill. The narrative around having a weak immune system is going to ensure that you continue to become ill. So that was a part of my process too, going through and processing a lot of the difficult experiences of my childhood. And then what begins to happen is there is more space. There's space away from the extreme symptoms. My body was coming more and more into homeostasis. Like, maybe I was getting sick twice a year, and then once a year, and then now, a year and a half. So you feel this incredible lengthening in the time that you're allowed to just live within a natural homeostatic state, which is a blessing in itself. And part of being able to live in that state is also to change your external circumstances. So we have to become aware of the events in our life that are causing us conflict. And when we become aware of those, it's processing the charge around those conflicts, but it's also making the changes in our lives. So we cannot just expect to just be doing the inner work and not be ill anymore. It's about recognizing, is this a safe place for me to live? Do I feel safe here? Do I feel safe with these people? Is the communication keeping me in a hypervigilant state? What is the form of communication? Are we able to calmly discuss conflict, or is there a constant level of elevation? And if you are living in constant stress, you will get sick. And you might not have symptoms now, but that's the wisdom of the German New Medicine, is that, not all the symptoms, but a lot of the symptoms do come at the healing phase. And so for me, I've just had a week of healing phase symptoms, so intense migraine, cough, and flu-like symptoms all through my body. But I knew it was coming. I've been in like a big kind of 6-year cycle of trying to resolve some things in my life, some big issues around relationship and home, and they are coming to resolution. And I just had a couple of big weeks of like cathartic weeks of doing the outer work and having those conversations and going back over some things that were just a little bit left unresolved. And then, bam, in comes the illness to tell me, yep, we've resolved that and now it's time to rest. I just want to say something on symptoms. So I do not take medication, and I haven't taken any form of medication, ibuprofen, painkiller, in about 10 years, I think. I grew up taking antibiotics multiple times a year. I was, like I said before, chronically unwell. When I had my throat hemorrhage, I was on a disgusting amount of medication. And like I said, like I had 10 years of chronic fatigue from that. And now that whole event, shall we say, that whole catastrophe was my initiation into Western medicine. And I definitely don't believe in preaching one way. It's just that's not part of my philosophy at all. But I hope you can see why I was turned so drastically away from Western medicine, because it was such a severe experience for me to go through at 11, 12 years old. And yeah, now I'm so thankful that I am in this place where my body just does not want a bar of any form of outside interference. And what that means is a lot of us think it's nothing. Like, I also, being an elite athlete, I used to take a lot of painkillers to reduce inflammation. But what we don't realize is that the inflammation is healing us. And when we take the painkillers, we reduce the symptoms of the healing phase, but we inhibit the process and we actually keep ourselves stuck. And so this is where patterns of kind of chronic illness evolve and arise from. So that is just also something that is personally really important to me, is like being able to just ride through the symptoms, however extreme. And sometimes I think to myself that I would have taken something if I had it in the house, but my partner's not gonna, we're both on the same page around this. And, he's been very supportive at times where I'm just like, can't cope anymore. But it's such a great thing to be able to ride through pain without, knowing that you don't need anyone else's assistance and that you can do it yourself. And that, now I'm on day 7 and like, I'm still not wholly there, but I feel so refreshed. I feel so renewed. And yeah, I feel ready to live fully the next year of my life without worrying that I'm going to go through this again, because I know what I've resolved, and I know, the meaning that it has for me mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. So yeah, for a long time, like I said, these feelings of adoration and wonder for my body and for nature were coming through me as I was practicing this beautiful yoga and meditating. And now I feel like I have a language for health that really reflects and honors those values. So I feel like I can live this whole experience of trust in my body. And I really hope that this, maybe supports someone else to begin to find what that is for them too.